Hey everybody, hope you're all doing good out there. Very regularly on my Patreon Discord, we watch videos, instant videos of people having crashes or near misses, the classic motorcycle instant videos you see. And we try and learn from them, try and see things coming before that rider did, or try and think about how that could apply to a situation for you in the future, things like that. It's that sort of constant mindset building that keeps you a safer rider and keeps you safe on the road. Because the truth of it is, yes, you can follow all the rules and you can be careful, but there's always a scenario where someone can do something. So what you have to do as you're riding around is think about what is the safest possible thing for me to do right now. And also know of certain setups that there are certain things you do and don't do. Now, I've been wanting to do a video on this for a while, and I could never really work out what was the best way of doing it. And then it dawned on me that just going to old school, chalkboard, cars, little motorcycle, don't worry about the scale between the cars and the bikes, it's as close as I could do. I can actually explain everything that comes to my mind when it comes to a certain junction or scenario on the road. Obviously we're not going to be able to cover every different scenario in this one video, but in this video we're going to cover turning right and turning left in this sort of a setup where you just have a road off to one side, a side road. Now, before we get into this, there's one thing we need to ascertain, which is whether these areas here are, say, clear pavements that you can see all the way across. You can see straight across all the way down here. Obviously, if there is a building at this corner, you can't see round here, so you're going to have to be really careful about approaching this, and we'll get into that. But for this scenario, I'm going to make it like 50-50. So we're going to work on the assumption that there are bushes around these corners, like you find very often on roads. So our line of sight is going to come across this way. So we're going to start seeing things from actually outside of the frame, but we need to concentrate on this bit. So let's start at the beginning in what looks like an empty road. You should be riding along, and as you're approaching here, or before you've got to this point, you want to be looking up here to see if anyone's coming out or if anyone is waiting for you. If there's no one there, I will slow a little bit to get a good view up the road. If there's no one, then I can carry on going and I don't need to worry about anything. That is your perfect scenario. The reason I will let off the throttle before a junction or hold back is because sometimes you'll get into one of these scenarios where you're coming along and a car's coming along, and then this is going to stop really suddenly on the line. Well, you didn't know that at this point. So if they continued, you're hitting. So if I find myself in this scenario that I see a car coming up here, I tend to move over just a little bit because it gives them a little bit more time to see me. I move so I can stand out a bit more, and I'm also preparing to stop just in case they decide that they wish to just go, which is very common. So the next scenario is very similar. You can see a car is stopped on the line here and you're approaching. In this scenario, I watch what the driver's head is doing and where they're looking, and also what the wheels are doing, because they may be indicating or they may not be. And this is where I get really mad about indicating. If this driver was indicating left, so they were turning down here, I would see that. If they're indicating right, so they're going to turn over this way, I won't be able to see that because the indicator's on this side of the car. Once you're about here, if they suddenly go from stationary, a car is not fast enough that it's going to get out in front of you, so you're going to be okay. Now, because this is a main road and this is a side road, this car here has priority of way. So this car here has to wait for everyone on this road, and they shouldn't emerge until it is safe and clear to do so. In this scenario, you've got a car coming down the main road, and obviously they have priority, but they decide to stop. And I have a video about this recently, so stopping for people on side roads, because they are now forcing this driver into a position where they have to go quickly because they know they've got the social pressure of this person waiting for them. So these people stop looking quite so well because they kind of expect those people to say, yeah, it's clear, you can go. And if you see someone flashing someone out, be really careful. So you need to be prepared to know that this person's going to pull out. Again, you can look at the indication as to what they're going to do, but if they're turning left into this way and they're indicating left, you'll see that. If they're turning right, you won't see that. And if they're not indicating, well, then you won't see it. So you'll assume they're going that way or they're not indicating. This is the problem with people not indicating, and it gets worse when we flip it. So be really careful in these sort of scenarios. Again, the rule is generally just hang back, but I want to run through all of these because we're going to get into some more well-known ones to do with filtering in a minute. Right, a variation on that, and I probably needed a bigger board to do this, is that a car is stopped here and you're behind the green car, okay? They are both stopped to allow this car to come out. Very often, bikers will want to take a filtering route, maybe up here. Well, obviously, in this scenario, you've put yourself in a little death gap where if this person decides to go, there isn't a huge amount you're going to do to get away with it. So in this scenario, don't try and get ahead and overtake them and do this, because it's not going to work out. They're clearly stopping in a very abnormal way for a normal road to let this person on the side road, who must be some sort of royalty, out. Similar scenario, we don't need this person, that's just overcomplicating it at this point. So this car here wants to turn right. So they tend to position themselves slightly further over to the right. What they should do, and what bikes should do, is because you have priority on this road over this road, you should go first. So you should stop here. Stop them from pulling out at all. So they can't, and you can go as soon as it's clear to do so. But sometimes people will stop, as I say, and will want someone to let someone out of this side road. Again, going up the inside here is a bad idea. But if you did, this person would see you and think you're a bit of a bell, but they can see what you're doing. What people are very tempted to do is go up the inside. Now at this point, you've put yourself in a situation where, remembering we don't have an oversized bike and one of the lowest cars in the world, they can't see you now. So they look left, they don't see you, they look right, and then they look right as they turn out as you're going along, and one of those happens. This is all about that thing about being predictable. Follow the rules of the road in these sorts of situations and everyone's going to know what you're going to do. Now this obviously all started going wrong with the point that this person did something they weren't supposed to do, which is what they should have done was block that car and turned in because they had priority. So the only time you want to be coming through a junction like this at normal speed, in my opinion, is when it is clear and you can see it's clear, or if this car is completely stationary and you've had your beady eye on it this whole time and you're prepared to stop, because say you're doing 30, which this setup normally would be, you can stop in a short distance if you practice your emergency stops, that is. It's about making sure that you aren't a possible target. Okay, let's busy up the scene a little bit. You've got slow moving traffic in both directions, you've got someone wants to pull out, and you're a bike, so you want to filter, right? Well, if this didn't exist, this scenario is a little bit dodgy because you're having to go on the other side of the road, but you know, if it's clear in spots, this is where you can filter along if they're going slower than the speed limit and you're doing less than 10 miles an hour over the speed of what they're doing. But when you come up to a situation like this, it's really important to hold back, because at this point here, depending on the spacing of the cars, so many things can happen. So I've removed some cars now, so there's some possibilities to move. In this scenario, you can see what's likely to happen is that this person wants to get into a gap and they don't want to wait forever, so they're going to try and force themselves in. Very often people do things like sticking themselves here, which is just a wall to a bike. So if you're filtering up, careful, because you don't have many options as to where to go now. Now I'm picking these scenarios particularly because they're crashes I've seen happen time and time again. Okay, so in this scenario we've got a car moving down this way and we've got a car stopped that wants to turn across here. Now, they are going to have looked in their mirror once, and once they're stopped, they're not going to check their mirror again, most likely, because the only thing they're concerned about is the cars coming this way. If you decide to filter up here, and for some reason they let them out, or they decide to go for the gap or something like that, you're in a scenario where they're not going to check their mirror, and they're going to turn across in front of you. And as you can see, this is a very classic scenario you've seen many times, or where they bump into each other like this and then end up getting sent off this way. There is a particular risk with these ones, obviously, because you can get railed into the other side of the road and get hit by a car that way, but hopefully there won't be a car there because they've just pulled out. But that doesn't mean there wouldn't have been a car there. So as you can tell, if you're at a junction, don't try and jump ahead of cars. It almost always leads to bad things for you. So obviously there are a million different scenarios. I can't do every single one, but I'm trying to hit on the ones that, you know, I know of a problem. But as you can see here, when it comes to a junction, you need to pay attention to lines of sight and whether people are moving or not, and just don't try and force the issue. Hang back for the junction, because you know, this section here, no one's pulling out on you. This section here, no one's pulling out on you. This tiny one here, this is where all of the risk is. If you imagine this is a bubble of risk, just slower through the bubble of risk and keep going. There are scenarios, however, where it is kind of okay to undertake, but you're not undertaking, you're continuing on, because if this car here stops in front of this car here and indicates right, like they should, there is nothing wrong with you passing carefully on this side, because you know, in this scenario, this car cannot pull out on you. You see what I mean? This is why the blocking is important, because it means that they can't do the thing. So in those scenarios, if they're indicating right, as I say, you can pass on this side, but be very vigilant, slow down a lot. Be careful, because also what can happen in these scenarios is they go, oh, actually, no, I didn't need to go that way. Well, bam. If I'm passing a car on the inside, I'm doing less than 10 miles an hour. You know, I'll slow right down, creep, be looking at them the whole time. So with all of those scenarios, generally they can be mirrored if you were doing a left or a right hand turn. It's basically the same thing in reverse. There is a key difference though. Okay, I've now reversed this and turned it into a left hand turn opposed to a right. And there is a key difference between left turns and right turns that most people might not think about. That it's actually, left turns are more dangerous than rights because you are on the left hand side of the road. If a car is on the right hand side and pulls out, it's either going to turn right and turn into your lane, or it's going to turn left and not turn into your lane at any point. With the left hand road scenario, if they're turning right, they go into your lane first. If they're turning left, they go into your lane first. Left hand turns are way more dangerous than rights because you have a 50% more chance of being hit, because you have that 50% chance of them not turning in your side of the road. This is where indication is really annoying and untrustworthy, the way that it works on cars. I made a video many years ago that suggested that you should have a light on this side saying I'm turning left and a different one, coloured one on this side to say that they're turning that way. So if you indicate left, you have one type of light here and one to say I'm turning left on this side and opposite the other way around. The reason for this is, as I mentioned earlier on, unless you see someone indicating right at a left, every other indication possibility is a hold back. And even then, do you trust that? So again, it's all about, in these scenarios, slowing down and being prepared. The one thing I do here that's different to the other side of the road, although I will do it to an extent, is that I will move over here. Because being further over here, let's increase the size of this bush. If you position yourself here and the car's approaching up this way, they can't see you. If you are here, you're more visible. Also, if they're stationary here and you're moving down the middle of the road here and they decide to pull out, you don't have as much time to get out of the way as you would have done were you over here. So you're more visible and you have more of an escape route. So that pretty much covers most of the scenarios where you're on the main road. Obviously, if you're turning off the main road, in this sort of a scenario, you're in a good way because at no point is that person going to come into your side of the road. Now, like with the right-hand side turn, if you're doing it from this direction and you're wanting to turn down here, you don't stop up here and allow them out first. You block them. So you want to make sure you've got a good line of sight on their eyes to see what they're looking at and make sure they see you when you stop in front of them. Latchy slightly off towards the middle here because obviously you're blocking them from coming out, but you're also giving plenty of room on this side. Well, the thing is, this is a 50-50 question. Do you actually want to block the road more so here so cars can't try and sneak up behind you? Or would you rather stay in the middle and hope to keep out of people's way and they'll slow to go around you? Depends on the area, depends on the person, your personal preference really. So you know in this scenario, you only got to wait till this is clear before you can come across here and go. Obviously, it depends on what they're indicating and stuff, keep an eye on them. But if they're stationary and you're in front of them, it would be unlikely for them to just then drive into you. If people have seen you, they tend not to want to drive into you. Okay, we're nearly done. This is the last part. So you're now on the side road and you wish to pull out. There's a couple of things to remember. You don't have priority away, so you need to pull out when it is safe and clear to do so. Now, one of the things you want to do when you position yourself here, whether you're turning left or right, is block it, because you don't want someone trying to sneak up the inside of you. If you go here, people are going to want to try and sneak up this inside path here and they can clip you. If you go too far over here, they can do the same thing. You want to be more blocking them, in my opinion, and also lined up for the direction that you want to be going, because then you're not having to do a tight turn slowly and then speeding up this way. If you're more angled towards the way you want to go, you can naturally just get on it and get out into that line of traffic without going so slowly or having to do such an extreme turn. And obviously those extreme turns at slow speeds are the thing that catch people out very often. So if you're turning left, you make sure you position in a way that people can't sneak up the inside or the outside of you and clip you. If you see a car coming in the distance, your judgment says there is the time to go, and you're sure of that, then you can go ahead of them as long as you get up to speed in reasonable time. Or you wait here for them to pass, so there's a gap, and then you can pull out. To the left, nice and easy, because obviously you're going from your road to the road you want to be on directly without crossing over another road. So when you're going to pull out to the right, you do need to check that everything is clear and see where the traffic's going. For me, I'll be looking at the traffic I'm going to hit first, this one, but I will not put myself in a position where I come into this lane here and wait for a car to come down here. Don't do that. You don't pull out until you can fully complete the manoeuvre, unless you want someone to drive straight to the side of you and you have nowhere to go. So you're going to want to be looking left and right, left and right, left and right to make sure that it's clear on both sides, and once you know you've got a good safe gap, you can then go. How big those gaps are is dependent on the bike you're riding, your skill and stuff. For me, I will take some smaller gaps than maybe some new riders will. Some riders can go too far without and be too hesitant. So as you can see, this sort of a junction, left or right, as a side road, is the sort of scenario where people get pulled out on all of the time and lots of incidents happen at, but you can avoid so many of them. I mean, the most classic one of a car pulling out on you is, you know, they're parked there, you're coming along here, they don't look at you, and then they just crash into you. That's because you've continued your speed and you've done absolutely nothing to check on what the driver's doing, if they're paying any attention. I'll be in scenarios where, unless I have a car directly at my butt, in which case I can't do this, I have to kind of slow as much as I can and move over as much as I can. I will slow right down until I get eye contact, and it's only at the point that I get eye contact that I'll actually pass them. Now, I'm not saying come to a complete halt, as I say, in a main road full of traffic. You can't do that, but you'd hope that in those scenarios they can see there is a line of traffic opposed to just one bike, which can be hidden. If you follow those core rules and don't do any of the silly stuff like trying to go up on the inside when someone's going to be pulling across, if you think where people could go and don't put yourself in those holes, you're much less likely to have any nasty incidents. Well, there we go. That's as much as I can think of right now for left and right side roads. I will be doing more of these in the future, but if you'd like to help support this channel, then please consider doing that through Patreon. Like the video, subscribe to it, grab some merch, do whatever you can do. For many years I've tried to help riders out as much as I can. I've got my playlist, Tips for New Riders, which has got how to ride a bike, licenses explained, methods to get better at slow control and things like that. But this is getting more into the theory of, not of the road as in the sense of its rules, but the rules that you should ride by that will keep you safe. I'm not a motorcycle instructor. I'm not, trained, other than the fact that I've really dedicated myself to become a better rider for many, many years. I've talked to people, I've read stuff, and I know several instructors who direct people to my videos and say that what I teach is very helpful as a base understanding before they go and get their full training. I'm not saying this is a replacement for professional training. I'm saying this is give you an idea of the things that you should be thinking about when you're riding around. When I'm riding around, I am like Terminator. Left, right, car, this person over there, what sort of speed are they moving at? Trying to take in the whole scene and see how I can slip through that without any broken bones. If there's a certain scenario you'd like to see me cover, leave a comment. I can't guarantee it'll be the next one, but it may be one I'll cover in the future. But I'm looking to cover all the major things that you need to think about. There we go. Till the next one. Bye-bye.